When you think about looking at art, do you think about the artist's hands, the artist's heart, or the artist's mind? And when you think about making your own art, what do you imagine? Is it the way you use your hands, like how you put something on a surface or combine one material with another? Or are you thinking about your heart, what you're trying to say and express from within? Perhaps you're deep in your mind. Some might call this being in the weeds, trying to troubleshoot and figure out some technique or compositional problem. You might be thinking about old techniques and how to make them yours and how to make them new. And is connecting an idea to the actual making of something a process that comes naturally, or do you need to find your way there? For over 50 years, Lissa Hunter has been intertwining these notions in her own stunning fibre art practice. Her work can be found in the Renwick Gallery of the Smithsonian Institution, the Museum of Arts and Design in New York, and the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, among other institutions. She's also been supporting her many students over the years with these complicated ideas. Spoiler alert, Lissa thinks you're brave for even contending with these questions. Today, we're lucky enough to have Lissa back with us for her second Friday Feature Artist interview. For a complete picture and background of Lissa's work, please be sure to find that original episode in our archive. But in this episode, there's a twist. Here at Take Two, we're incredibly excited to be, at this very moment, launching our first course with Lissa. In this chat, we'll discuss Lissa's art practice, what she's been working on recently, her philosophies as a mentor and educator, and what students might expect from her new course. Hopefully, we'll have a cameo or two from some cheeky squirrels or chipmunks. I'm Jo Wright, the creative director at Take Two, and I'd like to acknowledge the Gundungurra people, who are the traditional owners of the land where I'm coming to you from today. And I'm incredibly excited to welcome Lissa as our Friday feature artist. In the words of a fan, Lissa is a gentle genius. Let's get started. Hi, Lissa. How are you?
I'm fine, Jo. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you.
And thank you for that lovely introduction. My goodness.
Oh, our pleasure. It was an easy one to write, Lissa. And welcome to everyone who's tuning in live. Please say a quick hello in the chat if you can. We are coming to you live this morning on YouTube and Facebook. And if you have a question for Lissa throughout this conversation, please pop it in the chat. For our podcast audience, we've produced some show notes, and you'll find all of the beautiful images of the work that Lissa and I discussed today via the link in the episode description. So let's say hello to a couple of the people joining in, Lissa. We've got another Lisa. Hello from the German Baltic Sea.
I have two S's, you have two I's.
That's well, there we go. Yes. And we have Deb White. Hello, Lissa. I'm very excited to see you on the big screen and see all the beautiful places we visited together.
Hi, Deb.
So Deb was part of creating the course. We've got Karen. Hello from Maine. Karen. Austin.
Hello.
We have hello from Nebraska, Art Geek Teaching. Jill, hello from West Sussex.
Oh, nice.
Julia from Western Australia. Annie from North Wales, UK. So many people. Hi, Beverly, Lynette, Alexandra.
Oh, from Greece. My goodness.
Welcome, everyone. I think there's keep those hellos coming in, because it's just so gratifying to hear from people all over the world at all different times of day, at opposite ends of the seasons. It's quite incredible and such a privilege that we can come to you all in one place, all at the same time. So, Lissa, how are you feeling today? It's the launch of the course. It's pretty exciting. Our cart is open. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling very excited. I've taught for many years, workshops mostly. I did teach at college for a while, but mostly workshops with people who want to be there and want to learn what I know or what I can help them learn. And I love it. You learn so much when you teach. But this is the first time I've done anything online. So just the back and besides the fact that we're 16 hours difference in time and all of that, so that the whole making of this has been extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I can't believe how beautifully it's turned out. So I'm excited to meet everyone who takes the course and to spend a number of weeks together figuring out how we can make our art more our own and therefore of more value in the world around us. I think that's why artists make art. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And we'll dive into some information about the course later in the chat today. But I have one burning question, Lissa.
Just one?
Well, I've got a few questions,
Okay.
but this one is burning. It's a hot topic around the Take Two office. And, you know, everyone's trying to stay focused with their work and really, you know, make sure things are getting done and videos are getting edited. But we want to know about the squirrels and the chipmunks, Lissa.
I can't tell you
How
what
are they? Are they
they're,
getting enough peanuts?
they're getting
And
peanuts.
have you had any visitors today?
Oh, yes, yes. In fact, I should have just started taking pictures this morning. They, you don't have squirrels in Australia. I just think that's astonishing. There's my little one. He's one of our little buddies. These are the back steps of our house, and each morning, one or more. We have about 4 usually at a time who come around. They'll just appear at the door like that, saying, "Okay, give me some nuts, please." And some of them take them from your hand. Some of them are a little more skittery, but they're very common here because we have a lot of trees and they live in trees, and they are funny and industrious, and I just adore them. And the chipmunks usually don't have as many. If you have squirrels, you don't have a lot of chipmunks, and vice versa, but we do have both. And the chipmunks we don't see nearly so often, but I think they show up for the nuts that the squirrels haven't gotten to yet. So I realize our relationship is totally based on peanuts, but it's fun. It was so much fun to watch the Aussies, everybody who came to do the filming, to just go crazy for these little guys. It was lovely. We're like children. I loved it.
Yeah, well, when we were chatting a couple of weeks ago, Lissa, you said that they knock on the window for nuts, and I actually said, "Do they?" Because you could basically tell me anything about this animal, and I would believe you that there might be one of these creatures knocking on your window.
Like this fellow that you saw, it was about a foot
Oh,
outside of the back door, so he was not. He was just waiting. He wasn't pounding on the windows. But there are sliding glass doors on another part of the back area there. You can see part of the patio. And they do come up and put their paws against the glass, kind of looking. They don't knock, but they do, look once they see us up and about back there. Yeah.
Wow.
They're cheeky.
Yeah, really cheeky. Well, thank you. Thanks for the update. I'll report back to the team.
Now that everybody in this group now thinks I'm a total lunatic, we can move on.
Not at all, but let's get into something a little bit more related to, I guess, what people are wanting to listen to. I'm sorry for that diversion, but they're very cute. They're very cute. I'd love to know, and especially for our new audience or our audience who are listening, how would you describe your work to somebody who's never seen it before and who would really like to understand what it looks like and where you're coming from?
This is a question I am asked occasionally, especially if I'm in a social situation where people don't know what you do, and they say, "Well, what do you do?" And I'll say, "I'm an artist," and they'll say, "What do you paint?" And I say, "I don't paint." And then I've learned that if I can get my phone out quickly and show pictures of it, I'm ahead of the game, because to try to explain that these are objects that I make that go on shelves or boxes that tell a story that I have made up about certain subjects, and I make them by working with fibers or clay or drawing. By the time I go through all of this, because that's all true, but by the time I go through all of this, they're kind of, oh, really? What? It's hard to understand without seeing them. And so, but I guess I would say they are sort of the sizes vary, but they're generally within the range of what you might have in your home. They are three-dimensional. There are both pieces that fit vessels, for instance, that would sit on a surface, as well as pieces that go on the wall, a shelf that might have a vessel on it, plus some other objects. Um, they're really a lot about domestic life, about living one's life, and about connections between people. I don't try to do anything too outrageous. I'm not sure it's in me personally to do that, but I think also it's really good to be reminded consistently of what we have in common and the value of our daily lives, the value of having cups to drink out of, the value of having spoons, the value of having beauty. So that's as close as I can come to a verbal kind of sense of what I do.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's really descriptive and helpful, and I intentionally held off showing some images because I thought we'll just allow everyone to imagine in their minds their work, and then as we show images later in the session, they'll be able to connect the dots and see how some of those words connect together. And I think that's really true from what I've seen of your work. There's this groundedness both in the making because of the techniques and the materials you use, but what the objects actually are. They're recognizable to some extent. We know them. We have them in our home, and it's really beautiful. It's such a beautiful, warm kind of art to look at in that way. And in the intro, I talked a little bit about how you connect your hands in your practice to your heart and your mind. And I think this is a really universal question for artists, isn't it? It's how do we make the thing? How do we feel about the thing? And like, what do we actually have to do with our hands to put it together?
Yeah.
So I was just wondering how you go about bringing these elements together in your own work. Is there a typical flow, or is each piece unique?
Each piece is unique, and that's intentional. I am not good at repeating things. A quick story about when I was weaving, and I just graduated from graduate school, and I was a weaver and a floor loom weaver and tapestry weaver. And my mother said, "Oh, would you make me a set of placemats for Christmas?" And I said, "Of course I would. That would be great." And so I put on a nice linen warp, and I made one. She wanted 8 placemats. I did 1 placemat and thought, well, this was fun. And then I did the second one, trying to match the first one, and got bored with that, and so made it different. And got to the third one, and it sat there for a long time. She got 4 placemats because I could not do the repetition of these placemats. I was a bit of a brat for not doing it, but it told me something about myself, that indeed I like discovery, I like invention, I like thinking of something that usually comes from, I would say, oftentimes what comes into my head comes through my heart. And I don't mean that to sound corny, but it comes from a feeling or a recognition of something in the world that captures my imagination and says, do something with this. That's at that level. And then it goes to my brain, and I think, okay, so if I'm going to do this, do I want it to be made out of, do I want to coil it, or do I want to make it out of clay, or do I do a drawing of it, or how big is it going to be? And you start this sort of engineering aspect of what you're doing. And then your hands have to actually make that happen. So all of those things have to fit together. You can't just take one of them, I think. A lot of us who come through craft, who learn how to do things with our hands by following directions and using appropriate materials and coming up with something that looks the way we think it should look, sometimes have a hard time getting past that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. And if one's gratification comes from accomplishing the appropriate use of materials to make a beautiful object, that's what one should do. For me, that wasn't where I was. And so I became more interested in using those skills that I gained through craft, through the making of things, in a way that I could then express something. It didn't happen. I didn't say, oh, I'm going to do this. It happened over time. One of the big parts of why it happened is that I was teaching college at a small college in Pennsylvania, and I was married, and got a divorce. And after 8 years of teaching, I thought, this is a time I need to make a decision about what I'm going to do. And so I left teaching. I moved to Maine. I set up a studio, which was the front room of my little apartment. And I decided, what can I do to make a living doing this? And this was in the 80s. And and I was 30 something, 32 maybe. And there was a lot of interest in basketry coming around, and handmade paper was a big deal. And so I could and those things excited me. So I could kind of gather that information and learn that stuff and go from there. So time was on my side. It was really a great time to be doing what I wanted to do.
Mm.
Did that answer the question?
Yeah. And it seems to me, and we can talk a little bit about where students might find themselves at a little bit later in the session too, but it seems to me that craft to art practice thing it's a constant conversation. And I'm wondering if it's a consistency that's required, because you might be fantastic at a craft, at the making, and you'll know the technique and the materials backwards and forwards. You have no problems there. But to be able to explore, and if it's what you want to do, turn it into an art practice, you have to be able to be making often enough so that you can start the little experiments and adding in new ideas. And do you think that's what you discovered in your apartment?
Yeah,
when you were
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The example I give often is that when I decided to do this, I thought, okay, if I'm filling out an application and it says occupation, I would have written teacher, because I was teaching at the time at a college. If I wanted to be able to write artist there, which don't do that on a bank application. That's not what they want to see. But I claimed that. I said, okay, I'm going to be an artist, and I had wonderful parents who supported me in anything I wanted to do, and friends, and I had all the best possibilities going for me, which I'm very grateful for. But it was a moment that I decided to do that. And so you kind of have to, then you look around and say, okay, who's doing what, and what is this art about? And then that gets confusing, because you think, oh, I don't have a good idea. That's a better idea than mine, that kind of thing. And then you say, no, all of these people out here making art, capital A art, are listening to their heart and going through their heads and using their hands to make things, whether it's a painting or a building or whatever it is. So that I felt I had to kind of convince myself of that. And then, because I was at the right time for what I wanted to do, I could sell work in shops and galleries, and I could start. And I did I did a lot of teaching, workshop teaching, that supported an income. And living in Maine is a real benefit, because there are arts organizations and a craft association, and all sorts of community kinds of positive things here. So a lot of it was just pure luck.
Yeah, luck and time.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some art. Okay. I'd love you. I'll show some images, and I'm going to show some of the seeds artworks. And I would love you again to describe these, especially for our listening audience, in your own words, what the works are. And I think the thing I wanted to find out about these is that combination between traditional fibre art techniques and your contemporary mixed media approach, and how you found that happy balance or combined the two in these works. So I will show them now, and they're called Seeds, and they've got a few different names, but they're from 2024. Lissa, did you want to explain some of these works?
Sure. These are about, I don't know, 20 by 20, no, 18 by 26 or 24 or something. They're not very large. What you're seeing is a lot of paper The surface of the board is a piece of plywood, a really nice thin piece of plywood is the back. It's covered with paper in a collaged way. I used different papers and worked on them then with paints and charcoal and all. And then my idea of these was that there were drawings that were coming off the surface. So if you could see carefully the paper that's on the board, you would see a line drawing of, in this case, maple seed pods. And then wire comes off the surface and is enclosed in paper to create almost a reality of what those seed pods really are like. The idea being that these, what are essentially dead pods, because by the time they get to this point, they are no longer alive. They have the seeds in them that will produce life, but they're growing out of the drawing of the board they're on. So when I thought, oh, how do you make a drawing that comes off the surface? I've been using wire a bit. I took a course with Ellen Weisky, who's a jeweler and wonderful wire worker who lives here in Maine, and fell in love with the ability to use wire, which is like a thread, except that it stays where you put it, which is quite extraordinary. So I've been using wire in some of the pieces that I've been making, and then working with paper with the wire. And paper I've worked with always as well. So it's kind of a combination of drawing that I've done for a long time, using wire as a textile material in a way, and paper, and then drawing on the three-dimensional drawing on the surface. So that was the idea that I came up with to try to make it work. And I think it does work. And I'm doing calla lilies now, which I think is
wow.
beautiful forms. And that's another thing, I think, when you, sometimes you have an idea, you make it work, you do it, and you say, that's it, that's it, I've done it. And sometimes that's true, but other times you have to then say, okay, now what? What could I do that's sort of adjacent to this, or different scale, or I'm going to use color this time, or all sorts of ways of talking yourself into another iteration of that idea. And that's a skill. I mean, that's something you learn how to do. And it's one of the things we address in the course is how do you then, when you start working with an idea, how do you build a body of work or a continuity of work from that idea?
Yeah, and that's it's a beautifully, and those works are beautiful. Thank you for sharing the images with us. It's a beautifully simple idea. How do I make a drawing three-dimensional? Mm-hmm. And you could bring in your own concepts and thinking to that, and someone will look at it and bring in their own concepts and thinking to that. But that little idea is remarkably simple. And like you say, how exciting that it could set you off on years worth of exploration if it hasn't already.
It's true. And those are the best.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have an idea to do something that you need to get a certain material from some faraway country picked by, maidens at midnight in the, I mean, if you really set yourself up for having a hard time to do what you want to do, then you probably will do it once, and then that's it. So the simpler the idea in many ways, the more, the freer you are to explore.
Yeah, the very sort of the big conceptual thinking or the deep meaning from within can be overwhelming. So perhaps stripping it back to something as simple as possible. How do I turn this into this?
Yeah, and that's good for me. I mean, if you're writing an opera, for instance, you're not thinking about you're going to get big and complicated because that's the form. But in terms of what I do, the simpler the idea, the better.
Yeah, and I think that's a really nice segue to the idea of simple objects and everyday objects. And I feel like we can't have an interview with you, Lissa, without talking about some spoons. You knew it was coming, didn't you?
Absolutely. I'm fine. I'm fine with it.
So I'm going to show some images of Lissa's spoons. And if you're not familiar with this work, I encourage you to really delve in and find more images and look on Lissa's website and at all of our upcoming course content, because the spoons are absolutely delightful. And this is a still from filming the course, but we also have an installation from last year of your spoons. And Lissa, how many spoons do you think you've made now?
I was thinking about that. The first body of spoons I did was 100 spoons, and they were for a show that was in St. Louis, and it opened on March 20th of 2020, or whenever it was that COVID hit so strongly. So nobody saw the show. Everything went into lockdown like a week later. But I loved making them, and I got myself into making 100 spoons because I was asked to supply a photograph of the work that was going to be in the show, and I had just made a few of them. So I said, oh, it's going to be 100 spoons. This is a detail. That's, well, then I had to come up with 100 spoons, which was easier than I thought it would be, but took a long time. But the idea of the spoons is that they are universal, that everybody uses spoons. But then back to the idea of a simple idea. If you have a straight something and a cupped something and you put them together, you have a spoon. So it really opened up a huge possibility of materials, found materials, structured materials. Almost all of them have something I've made in them, either coiled or clay. You can see wire and paper. You can see an old tool handle with a coiled bowl, a doll's arm holding a little cup so that it becomes like a spoon, so that it really, and it's still, when I'm walking around, I see something on the ground. The first thing I saw when I started thinking about spoons was a curled up dried leaf on the ground. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's the bowl of a spoon. So it was very reinforcing to see that right away. I've probably made 150, 160 spoons over time, over 5 years. Also, I like them because people get it. People love looking at them, and they'll go up to them and say, "Oh, look at how that's done. What? Oh, no, that's my favorite. What's your favorite?" They have a kind of outreach quality to them that I find very pleasing, and people can afford them, and they have them in their homes. Almost always in kitchens. People hang them in their kitchens, which is totally appropriate. Yeah.
There's something and I think I've heard you describe this before, there's something very fundamental about the idea of a cup attached to a strand, and we start with an arm and a hand, and that's probably where the very first spoon came about, and then creating tools from those.
Yeah.
Yeah, and is there something about the unexpected there, or it's not humor, but the quirkiness of creating an object out of something unexpected and causing perhaps surprise or delight in the viewer. Is there something there for you? Is that one of the things that interests you? Yeah.
And that's very interesting. You just brought up something I hadn't even really thought about, but that is there. My whole childhood was based on, my father was a magician, and I talk about this in the class, I think, or in the thing, and he always was doing crazy little things and delightful things and pulling, nickels out of my ears and things like that. But I think that, and he told horrible jokes. Dad jokes were invented by my father. I'll tell you, he told terrible jokes. But that kind of sense of relationship to the world, I think, is a part of my upbringing, for which, again, I am hugely grateful. But it delights me to see people be delighted. It's wonderful to sell work and be in a museum, but to actually see a person looking at something and smiling or laughing, or say, I remember when such and such happened, we had to get into it in that way it's the good stuff.
Yeah. I can imagine, and the image we showed was a wall with lots of spoons installed on it, made out of lots of different materials and techniques. I can imagine people in that gallery setting, you know, we're in a gallery, right? But we're standing in front of a wall of these incredible spoons made out of unexpected materials. I can really imagine people getting in close and pointing and choosing their favorite, and it brings up something, very happy, I think,
and
for
human.
the viewer.
Very human.
Human. And that's the other thing I'm really curious about, is the human and, I guess, domestic setting that some of these objects, you know, are based in. So we have spoons. I also have some brushes, which I'll share here. And these are, again, I guess, very familiar objects made out of very unexpected materials, but they have a domesticity. I wouldn't say, I don't really read them as feminine, but, you know, we're talking about the home and objects from the home. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about that, the home setting that some of these objects are derived from.
Yeah, well, that's really, it's absolutely true. This was not a decision. I didn't say, okay, I'm not going to deal with the outdoors. I'm not going to deal with politics. I'm not going to deal with it. I'm going to deal with domestic objects. That was not a linear kind of decision-making process. I think part of it is the materials I work with lead to a kind of, you know, if I were pounding metal or casting bronze, I think I would have a different vocabulary in terms of the visuals as well as the making of the object. So working with fibers is very hands-on, slow, repetitive, tends to boring kind of thing, but it gives you a certain look. And we all know textiles. We all, you know, have clothes and all of that. But then I think to be able to tell a little story or to surprise people again, they have to be familiar with the object that this is based on in order for them to be surprised. If I made something that was a play on a farrier's tool for cleaning hoofs for horses, very few people would know what that looked like in order to know that this was an extension of that. And so it wouldn't have the same kind of closeness. So in this case, everybody says, oh, that looks like a brush. But wait a minute. You know, so I think that's part of it. And also I guess I don't know. I like domestic life. I am not a domestic person in the old traditional sense, but I like cooking food. I like feeding people. I like having a clean house when it occasionally happens. So it's sort of a natural sandbox for me to play in.
Yeah, lovely. If we talk about the connection more of ideas through to a finished piece of work, you shared some images with us. One of them is the still life drawing from 2024. And then also your biography work from 1999.
Yeah.
And I'd love to understand that creative process a little bit more, going from the initial idea to the fully realized piece. You're working with sometimes complex media or, you know, mixed media. So could you talk us through a little bit, say, how something like this, a drawing, it presents itself as a finished artwork in itself, but what do you do with it next?
Oh, it's interesting you say that, ask that. This is the back, there's a back panel that's on the wall and then a shelf that comes out from it. So the bottle and column piece and the 3 bowls stacked up and the big plate are all in the drawing. They're charcoal drawn on a board. The other objects, the pitcher, the other 2 little vessels and the cup and saucer, are made out of clay and they're actually sitting on the shelf. So the sort of conceit of it is that it looks like it's all either drawn or it's all real, that you have to, people get tricked. Again, I'm tricking people. That's probably not very nice.
I think you tricked me. I think you tricked me. Well, because I thought it was a drawing.
Yeah. See, it works.
It works. Tick. Yeah, there's that magician coming out in you.
Thanks, Dad. Um, but in a way, it has to do with thinking about reality and what's real and what's not. And the idea that it's a still life, there's such an artistic tradition of still life as being um, the whole notion of, especially like 17th, 18th century into 19th century painting, and each object was a metaphor for something, for dying or long life or the passing of time or whatever, so that they were very prescribed kinds of paintings always. And then they became less so, and people still do still lifes today and use all sorts of objects. But I wanted to kind of make a play on that notion of what a still life is. And make it kind of a trick. I'm going to do more of these. And I haven't decided what that means exactly, because I think this piece is successful as it is. So I wouldn't want to just do more of this. But the idea of drawing and objects fitting together so closely that they become a kind of a different reality, I think is interesting. And I want to do more of that.
That's quite incredible. And for those listening, it is a three-dimensional artwork. It's a drawing with objects in front of it on a shelf. But the way that Lissa has rendered both of them, they look so much the same that it is that trick. It's really beautiful.
Oh, I'm so glad I tricked you. That's wonderful.
You did. Yeah. I think I've just got to come and see your work in real life, right?
I think so.
That's what we're working towards here.
Absolutely.
And let's chat through biography. So this is an older work, but we have a shelf with objects on it. Could you chat through the journey from idea to completed work when it comes to this piece?
This became biography. I was thinking about a life from beginning to end, and how do you show that in objects? And so this is no particular person's life, but it starts at the left, and in the left corner you can see a little rectangle, and that's the letter A. It's a printer's type, and it's the letter A. And then there's a ball and something that looks like a little book, and something that might be a toy, and then some sewing thread and a pin cushion with a needle in it. There's a couple of books, an apple. There's a Cezanne drawing, painting, a little paper of that. It goes along. There's a box that has a doily in it that's like a very ladylike thing. And then it gets a little rougher, and there's a stone and letters that are very old. And then at the right-hand end of this shelf, which is about 5 feet long, I think, there are 3 more letters, which are XYZ, like the ending of this story, which is this person's life. And so once I decided I wanted to do that, I could kind of make objects that might be appropriate or might not, and see how they fit. And so it's not to be read left to right as if this is when the person was 13 years old and 30 years old or whatever. It's not that, but this sense of, and you'll notice too that it's small on the left and small on the right, and it gets bigger in the middle. So there's this sense of our lives as we start out having kind of a small sense of things, and then coming and flourishing and becoming full adults and accomplishing things. And then toward the end of our lives, quite often it becomes smaller again. So those are the kinds of things that I was thinking about when I made this piece. It was made over time, because I would sort of make a few things and stick them up there, and then say, oh, there's a hole there, it needs something, what would be appropriate there? And so it was the heart, the idea came from wanting to show a life. And then the engineering became one of, how do I make these objects? And the head was, when is it enough? Does this really look like a continual lifespan or not? So all 3 of those things were at play. And I've had this piece obviously since 1999, and I've shown it a few times. I think people look at it and say, I don't want to have to dust all those things, so they're not going to buy and put it in their house. But I was involved in a show just this last summer, and I thought, I'm going to get that piece out again, because I think it's strong, and people did respond to it. It was great fun to see that.
Yeah, I guess it's got the narrative and the story, but because of the familiarity of those objects, it's a completely open piece for interpretation.
Yeah,
it's really beautiful, really
Thank you.
beautiful. I have a few more works to show, and one of these is highlighting the boat vessels. That's been a recent preoccupation, and I'm really interested in the idea of the boat or the vessel and the ladder. And could you explain again, I guess, the simple idea, perhaps, or maybe it's not simple, and how you moved towards these finished pieces?
Yeah, I did a series of these that were quite small, maybe 8 to 10 inches wide, and the panels in the back were like 8 by 12 or something, and then the shelf. And so they're small pieces. And I really was, frankly, more interested in the drawing than I was in the vessels. And so I started working on them to do, excuse me, to do drawings on them and play around with the paper collage and surfaces and all of that, kind of knowing what I wanted them to look like. But the piece there are 3 pieces up for those who aren't seeing them. And one of them is called Parched. And I wanted to, and it does look as if things are drying up, or as if you were looking out onto the desert and you see that kind of haze. And then there's this almost as if it were writing kind of panel down the middle. And I thought of using wire and paper to make a form for that, as if it were drying. So in my mind, it was a boat or maybe a pod. I really didn't have a specific thing in mind, and then the name became Parched because it has that dryness to it. The middle one is called How It All Ends. And a woman who saw this show, she said, you're not very happy, are you? And I said, no, it's okay. But it also has a wire basket and stones in it, and a lot of drawing on the back and on the shelf itself. There's something about the stillness of my work that has come around recently, and we can talk about a show that I'm working with some other folks on called Still. But that sense of looking at it and feeling like you're holding your breath. And that's how It All Ends came to me. It was like, this is the end. And I not in any kind of horrid way, but just reality. And on the right, I did another piece more recently of sort of a boat shape with a ladder in it, because I think it shows a kind of precariousness. You can imagine a ladder against a wall in a house and say, okay, I'll climb the ladder. But think of it if it were in a canoe on the water, and that, the boat is moving and the ladder is moving, and how would that work? And it's called In Search of Truth because there are marks at the top of the ladder that are sort of like, if you could just climb up that ladder and read that, you would know the truth. But that seems a precarious business these days. So just in the way that I did spoons and the way I did brushes, then this format became something I did a series of, different, and yet I didn't have to stop and think how big, how small, big, all of those things were kind of established by working in a series.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because at the beginning of this conversation, you talked about the placemats and how you found it hard to make them all the same. But then when you're looking at work like that, you see this consistency and rhythm.
Yeah.
And yet you can see you as an artist really intrigued by one thing, but taking the opportunity each time, just like the placemats, to extend outwards and do something different.
Yeah. It's good to have. I guess it's like going on a trip. If you said, okay, I'm going to go on a 3-day trip, and you just got in your car and started driving, you could be gone for 3 days, but it might be a bit of a problem if you didn't decide, do I want to go where it's warmer or colder, or do I want to go to a city? Do I want it? If you can sort of decide a few things ahead of time, then it makes that journey a little more productive, shall we say? Maybe not better, but just different than if you just start driving. And I think that's kind of a metaphor for what I do, I guess.
Yeah. I guess everyone will be a bit different in the map that they need for that road trip. Some will need, the full GPS,
Right.
instruction.
Exactly.
And some will be like, I'm fine with a destination.
Yeah.
And everyone's a little bit different in that way.
Thank goodness. Yeah.
Yeah, thank goodness. And I guess this brings us around to the topic of your teaching. You've taught for many years, and you really emphasize the importance of learning from others, both as a teacher and a student. And I'd love to ask you about how you see this role, and I'd love to understand why teaching is important to you as an artist. Not all artists are teachers, and not all people are natural teachers, so people sort of find their way there. And so what is it about it that's important to you, Lissa?
I'm fairly good at it. I mean, I'm a verbal person and I can explain things. I mean, that's no small thing. I understand why some artists who are wonderful artists aren't good teachers, because they don't like to talk. They don't exchange well. I've always had the gift of gab, again, my father. So it's easier for me than it might be for others. It is a joy to watch somebody get better at whatever it is that they do. It's probably like a parent helping a child learn to ride a bike, and you have your hands on the handlebars and you're helping the child move along on it, and they fall over and everything like that. And then finally they take off and they go on that bike. It's not that dramatic, and they're not my children, but that sense of having that interaction is it's like an addiction. You really just want to do it. And there are so many wonderful places to teach these days, and both schools and craft schools, art schools, but also high schools and groups that are like they're a basketry guild in Houston, Texas, or they bring people in to teach. So you have almost a guarantee of having people who are there because they want to be there and they want to know what you know, and they'll work hard. And so it's just it's a setup for a wonderful situation. And one of my trepidations in doing, frankly, this course is that I really am used to being in a room with people, showing them something, and then they'll say, but what if I did it this way? And you say, oh, that's a good idea. Let's try that. And that kind of back and forth, I really enjoy. Well, that doesn't happen in here until we get into the community group and things like that. There will be some of that, but we had to film all of this, in 6 days or 8 days or whatever it was, and you guys put it together in this fabulous form. But I'm just doing this. I'm not getting, the immediate feedback. So it's a very different experience. But teaching is, there are some people who could teach anything. I think that's just how they work. I'm not sure I could do that, but what I do teach, I feel comfortable doing and enjoy it immensely.
Yeah, I guess the online format will be slightly new territory, but we will work so hard in that community group to recreate the workshop experience. And I guess it means people can do it from their kitchen table and their backyard shed. And it'll be really interesting to see how people grapple with the course, literally.
Yeah. But I mean, people, who are here tonight from Greece and really everywhere. That's just astonishing. And that couldn't happen in a room with 12 people. It just wouldn't happen that way. So it's very exciting.
Yeah. Do you ever find yourself teaching a workshop and then coming back to your studio and directly applying your own teaching or your own advice?
Yeah. Mostly in sort of organizational things, because I'll say, now, be sure to put your paintbrushes in the water immediately so they don't get, and all those kinds of things. And I think, listen to yourself when you're talking about those things. But also, it's a matter of energy. And also, it's wonderful to have people think you're smart about something. It's wonderful to have, I'm serious, to ask you a question and you have an answer for it and they're pleased and it does something for them. That's a wonderful, so you come back kind of feeling like, yeah, I can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've taught in the past as well, and sometimes it's like that thing of taking your own advice and you actually have to say it to a student to remind yourself to do it yourself. Like those sort of little lessons happen constantly and forever around what you need to grow.
Yeah.
So I guess that brings us to talking about the course itself. And I just wanted to take a moment to remind our listening audience on the podcast that you'll be able to see all of the images that we talked about in our episode description, a link in our episode description, including the one that tripped me up. So you'll see that and you'll have a look at it and you'll see if it also trips you up.
Well, it tripped up people in the gallery too.
Did it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that makes me feel slightly better. And if you like what you're hearing in the podcast, please take a moment to subscribe to our show. We're doing these interviews now regularly in this podcast format so that more people can listen while they're making or while they're driving or whatever it might be, cleaning their house, whatever it might be.
Brilliant.
Or gardening. Yeah. So take a moment to do that if you're listening in and you're enjoying what you're hearing so far. But Lissa, let's get into the course. And I have a video to play to kick us off with that chat. I'll just pop that on now.
Okay. The idea is not to look for inspiration, it's to find it. I want you to think of the notion of inspiration as the potential in everything around you. That everything you see around you can potentially inspire you in some fashion. And if it inspires you, it's valid. I've been making artwork as what I do for over 50 years. It is taking my experience, making it available to you. And the more you can do that, I think the fuller your art practice is, and the more comfortable you feel with saying, I'm an artist. We're going to reimagine what we already know and see where that can take us. Look for new ways of pushing the notion of art and your own personal expression. Art is about life, it's about experience, it's about nonverbal communication, saying things that help you make sense of your own life, but also then invite someone else to have that kind of information. By separating materials, techniques, and ideas through the course, we're talking a lot about all three of those things. They're not just materials that we mold, they're not just used for structure, they have an expressive voice. And then we'll move into other structural techniques, approaching basketry not necessarily in a strictly categorical way. Throughout the course with each module, I'll be giving you tasks to do, ideas, ways of working that you can take what I've said and shown you and make it yours from your experiences and your hands and head and heart. The last part of the course is more about thinking about a body of work, and not necessarily a body of work to be shown together, but thinking about your work as an ongoing story, and each piece is a chapter in it. It is personally from you and only you. That's what we're trying to do. It's not about improving your practice. It's about expanding your ideas to reimagine and come up with the next step that is yours. That is your idea put forth in a form that others can engage in, feeling supported in that process and making great art. I'm Lissa Hunter, and I invite you to come join me on this journey in this course. I would love to meet you there and to see where we end up.
Well, there you go. That's a bit of
Yeah.
an intro to
Good
the
job.
course. And we have a comment from Tanya. I've been waiting for Lissa's course to come around ever since I watched the first interview and just enrolled. Very, very excited. Tanya, you must be one of the first because the cart has only been open for about 60 minutes. So welcome to you.
Thank you, Tanya.
And thank you for joining the course. And I think it's pretty evident, Lissa, from everything we've talked about, as well as the video and the images. But I just want to clear one thing up for everyone. Is this a basket weaving course?
It is not a basket weaving course. First of all, I don't weave baskets, I coiled baskets, but still, a lot of what we'll be talking about and doing can be used in many different ways. And also that the techniques we're doing, coiling, looping, applying paper, stitching, they're all very, very simple. And if you do those and you say, but what if I did use these materials to use that idea? I think that's very possible. You can see from my work that I don't just coil baskets. And so I think that even, probably being in fibers would help you kind of get it more quickly because you're used to handling fibers. But I don't even know if that's true. I taught a workshop in Lexington, Massachusetts at Lex Arts, which is an arts organization there. And we did, the idea was adornments, was bracelets, pins, crowns, whatever, anything you put on your body as an adornment. And a third of the people in the class were jewelers. They weren't fiber people at all. And yet we did paper and wire, we did coiling, we did looping, we did a couple of other things. And they all, you know, no matter what their backgrounds, all got something from it. And in fact, fed each other because they were bringing their experience from what they did to the group. So it's not a basketry class per se, just as I think my work is not basketry per se.
Yeah, I think we've cleared that up.
Okay.
I guess a good question to ask then is what can students expect to learn in terms of techniques, but also the principles that will help them attach technique to ideas?
This actually is a rather rigorous course. It's not take A and B, put them together, have C. It's not after the first session, you'll do the second one, which was strictly based on the first, and then the third based on the second. It's not that. It starts out dealing with materials and how we look at materials. How do we identify the qualities of the materials we use so that we can look for other materials that would act in the same way? We talk about techniques, and I introduce these very simple techniques because they help us all kind of have a base to work from. And also they're hugely helpful in other things you might do. They're hand issue. You don't need many until you need a pair of scissors and a needle and not much else. And then we're going to talk about a bit about design, and this is not a design course, so you're not going to learn all the basics of design, which is a wonderful thing to do, by the way, if you can take a design course. But I want you to be able to look at something you like and say, why do I like this? Is it color? Is it the contrast in the, I like very bright colors. I like the sharp edges of these shapes in here, so that you can start analyzing what you see.
Looks like we...
In fact, in a way, by looking at it as design, as looking at it as design, you're taking away from the idea of copying.
It looks like we've got a little bit of a connection problem, Lissa. So just so you're aware, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you see me now? Are you?
Yep. We can mostly hear you. Sometimes the video stalls a little bit. So just so you're aware. But we are coming close to the end, and I just had a few more questions. It looks like Lissa has frozen on screen. So what I might do while we wait for Lissa's connection. Oh, there she is.
I can run inside with my computer if that would help. I'm out in the studio.
If you have a better connection, Lissa, and it's easy to hot-foot it to your stronger connection, that's great. But it's
maybe I can show it to you as I go. This will be a little strange, but
we're going to get a full tour of Lissa.
Oh, yes, you can. No, you don't need to see my studio now. It's not. I'm going downstairs.
Okay, I want you to be careful because it looks dark. So
it's not that dark.
You just take your time.
I will. I think this happened last time as well. And I'm surprised. We got a new internet connection. But
yeah, that's all right. That's okay.
I'm walking across
the patio. What we do in this day and age with technology.
If this were the daytime, you'd see the squirrels.
Ah, well, look, if I have to resort to just showing pictures of squirrels, I will do that.
Yeah, there you go. It's always a winner.
Okay. Here we go. I think this is feeling a little bit more consistent now, Lissa. So just take a moment to get comfortable.
I will. Excellent.
Brilliant. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for being patient, all of you.
Oh, I think everyone understands. You know, we all have connections that go in and out, and
crazy.
It's just life these days. The flip side is we all get to be here from any corner of the planet, pretty much.
Absolutely. So
I'd love to just ask a couple more questions about the course, and I think something I'd like to know is the course runs for about 8 weeks, and you have that interaction period in the community group. If someone was really new to this, new to art or new to fibre art or new to any of the techniques that we've discussed today, what would you hope for them? You know, working through the course and the program, coming to the end in a couple of months, what would you hope for someone who might even be feeling a bit tentative right now or a little bit in uncharted waters?
A lot of things come to my mind. There's no scorecard on this. There's no failing. There's no, if this intrigues you, if the idea of being able to coil a basket intrigues you, why not try it? Everything, I've tried to keep it as real wordish as possible, as opposed to art speak or technical language or whatever, so that this is a good chance to be appropriate for you. One of the wonderful things about the class is that it's you can go at your own pace, so that if you feel like I'm not getting this and you have a question about coiling and you put it in the community group and we answer and I say, try it this way or whatever we can do to help you with that, you can work through that. It's an open, I think just being open to the possibilities is half the battle. And then after that, you find out what you can do. And it's very simple stuff. Something just flitted through my head and left. Being an artist, the notion of being an artist or making art has been hijacked by the marketplace, frankly. I think that's, you see these things selling for enormous amounts of money and whatever. And so we think of art as something extraordinary. It is extraordinary, but not in that way. It is what people do with their hands and hearts and minds to express something about themselves to people who want to hear that, or don't want to hear it, maybe even too. And so if that intrigues you, if you think I'd like to try that, you'll be fine. Being an artist we're all artists in some ways, and we all have that in us. And some of us just get to fill in the occupation line with artists, So I don't know.
Selectively, though, right?
I don't know if that really um, would ease any angst somebody might have, but
Yeah.
if you're thinking about it, give it a try. Give it a try. You'll have.
Do you think, because what comes to mind for me is that some of the techniques and materials are so fundamental. And we started off this conversation talking about the simple idea of turning a drawing into something 3D. Do you think similarly an entry point or a road in to this art world is just to pick up the material and to start making or start
Absolutely.
just start doing it, and then the rest will come, and the rest you will be guided through in the course? Do you think that's also an approachable way to consider it?
Yeah, not everybody is meant. I mean, my best friend growing up is a wonderful musician, and she could play the piano, and she could just play anything. And you said, hum middle C, she'd hum middle C. I mean, she was just had music in her, has music in her. She's still with us. And I could draw anything, I could sort of, I could make it look like that. So we were obviously born with different kinds of skills, and I understand that. And it's much easier for her I tried to play the piano and it wasn't going to work. I could, put my hands in the right places, but it wasn't going to happen because it wasn't in me. So I would say that, some people are going to try this and go, not for me. I get that. There's nothing wrong with you if that happens. On the other hand, everybody can do something better than he or she does now at this moment, putting in some time. Drawing is very much like that. Drawing is, nobody can teach you to draw. You have to learn to draw by drawing. And it takes time, and you get enough feedback of success as you go that you continue doing it. But it's the same with all these techniques. I think I say in the course, I've never seen a really good first coiled basket. They're lumpy and bumpy, and they have holes, and they don't sit up straight and all of that, because you're learning. It's riding a bike. So I think that the simplicity of the materials, the simplicity of the techniques, the effort that we are making to tie these things together in some sort of sense that you can, by doing this, then do that, thinking about it in different ways. I think that's the intention of the course. We'll see whether it's successful or not, but that's the intention.
And just as a final question, and sort of to circle back to your experience as a teacher, can you think of an example or a student or a story where you really witnessed some sort of change or breakthrough? I mean, you probably have hundreds because it happens all the time in big and small ways. But is there an example of somebody that comes to mind where you felt they really just broke through something?
The one that comes to mind is a woman named Ann Morton, who actually, I think she took a class that I taught at Aramont School of Crafts in Tennessee. Craft school is a 5-day workshop, and we were doing coiling and twining, I think, some simple techniques. And at the time, she was mid-20s, maybe 30, I don't know. But she was not a child, she's not a kid. She said she was working at an ad agency or an art, commercial art kind of situation, and so had an artistic set of skills, but she fell in love with doing some of these things. And one of the things she made was a leaf that she was doing twining on. And she said, oh, I'd love to go back to school in fibers, and I would love to learn more about this. I feel so good about it, and that kind of thing. And I said, well, check it out. See, there are these programs that are around, and she was in Arizona, and I said the University of, I think it was Arizona State, has really good fiber programs, and go see this woman, talk to her, whatever. This is not a technical breakthrough, but so she did, and lo and behold, she got her degree, her MFA, and this was maybe 20 years ago now. But I didn't know it at the time, but she just recently sent me a picture of when she had her MFA thesis show, and she had a little writing, at the entry of the show about who she is and what she did and that kind of thing. And she had the leaf that she had made in that class, and she had pinned it to that. She had told me, and I at some point, but I'd forgotten. She said, when I get my MFA, I'm going to thank you by putting that leaf there. And I thought, that was years ago. And a conversation at 9 o'clock at night, and we were both working late in the studio. And that kind of community that happens within art, an art course particularly, it can be so potent. And she's doing wonderful work now, powerful work out in the community that is really important. And she probably would have gotten to that on her own, but I don't know. So that's an example in one way.
That's a beautiful, I got goosebumps. That's a beautiful
story. I did too.
Yeah. And that's, if we think about that question of what is it about teaching, that's it, right? And they might not all be MFA graduates.
Right.
They might not all be going on and becoming professional artists.
Right.
It can happen in a small way as well, but that's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.
So exciting to hear how one of your students is thriving like that. We have a comment here that I'll just share from Angie. I'm not sure, Lissa, if you know Angie, because she took a class from you over 20 years ago, has been a coiler ever since. And Lissa truly was the most influential artist and teacher I know. She's kind and so full of information she loves to share. Take this course. You'll be so inspired. Angie, you can come and join the marketing department if you like. You're doing a great job for us.
Live with me. Come on. She does beautiful work too. That's very funny because I'd kind of I know her name, and I think I see her work on Instagram, but I'm not sure. But and I have good feelings about it, but I had no idea that.
Oh, there you go. So some of them are pinning their very original piece to their MFA showcase, and some are just holding you in their heart, Lissa, which is
lovely.
Just as lovely.
It is.
So that pretty much brings us to the end of the interview today. And in terms of the course, it's just launched now, so you can enroll. And there's a lot more information on our website, which is fibreartstake2.com, including some of the beautiful show reels that we're showing in this chat today. And there's some frequently asked questions as well. You can also, if you have any questions, reach out to our team directly, support@fibreartstake2.com. And we would really encourage people to consider applying. Lissa, we're so proud of this course within the team, and I can't express to you how much everyone is just raving about the content and your style of teaching and how it's all come together. So
through a lot of work, you folks are extraordinary. I mean, every T will be crossed and every I will be dotted. These people are, and I want to say this because the world is kind of difficult right now, I think, for many of us. And to see a group of people, your staff, all of you who work together with such kindness and generosity and intelligence, coming up with something that may be of value in this world, connecting people and helping people realize their full humanity and who they are and what they want to do. You are to be congratulated and applauded. It's not easy. I know you work very hard, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it. And thank you so much.
Well, it's absolutely our pleasure. And you've led me beautifully into a roll call of the team that I'd like to just give a shout out to who are behind the course. So my image in my mind that's popped to my mind is lots of squirrels working behind the scenes. They're not squirrels. squirrels. They're people. So we will start by mentioning Ange, our inspiring founder, and Take Two, and Deb White. And some of these images won't be of these people. These are just some beautiful behind the scenes shots. So we have Ange, our inspiring founder, and Deb White, who were there on the ground filming and producing the course, along with Gary Weston. There's also our incredibly committed and talented production team led by Urs, including Anna and Taylor, who are our editors, and Siska and Tara. And that team has worked, I guarantee you, around the clock to edit a beautiful course. And if you're feeling inspired, as you read our emails and our social content, it's down to our marketers of the course, Naomi, Cass, Nicola, Ash, and Zell. Also a shout out to Daniel, our general manager, or our everything man, and Arnold, our developer, who builds our web pages. And then finally, but really importantly, to those who are listening or watching who are thinking about enrolling in the course, we have our fantastic account management team. Sophie, our senior account manager, will be managing this course and looking after you, Lissa, as well as the students with all her love and care, as well as Katie, who is a constant voice of reason and support on our help desk. Katie has also put together our beautiful resource guide.
Amazing.
It's an amazing resource PDF that all students will have access to.
And it is a huge part of this course. I'm going to say this because I was stunned at how beautiful they are and how complete they are. For each module, I say things and whatever, and they took that and put it into written format of how to do this, pictures, resources of places to get things. Remember to, wear your mask when you're spraying with spray. I mean, everything is in this resource guide. It's just one.
Yeah, and we get a lot of feedback that the resource guide, as well as the videos, just sort of deliver over and over again, and you can come back to things and revisit ideas. If you're not exploring it right now, it's there for you later. Also, I should do a shout out for our beautiful ambassadors who support our community groups. And you'll have Noni on this course, and she's in the Facebook group every day, working with students, helping with inquiries, connecting the dots. And there's a real sense in that group that it's a safe place, and you're encouraged to share work if you're comfortable. You don't have to. You can ask questions. You can ask technical questions. You can get some help, and those groups become a very special thing in their own right. And they're also, like the resource guides, a really constant support for our students. So there we go. It's quite a team. Let's put things together here. But I thought it was important to shout out to them.
I'm glad.
And then Lissa, I'd like to shout out to you as well. I've had such a fantastic time chatting to you today and getting to know you more and talking about your work and your philosophies as a teacher. And watching the course behind the scenes has just been an absolute delight. So thank you so much for everything you've brought to our Take Two family. And we're just so excited about this course and what it might bring and those breakthroughs that it might have for our students. So for those who choose to enroll, thank you. And we're so excited for you. We delight in every single enrolment. It's now open. You can dive right in. There's a period of time for you to join and get your bearings, and then Lissa will start engaging in the group itself from the 10th of March. And her direct interaction lasts for about 8 weeks, but the learning content, the group, is available to you for life. So that kind of brings us to a close, but I do just have one little special note, because we do have Deb White watching, and she was there for the production of the course. She says, "My time with you, Lissa, during filming was incredibly special, and I will never forget it. You're an incredible artist and a beautifully inspiring teacher. People who take this course will thrive." So that might be a really nice place to finish.
Thanks, Lissa. Thank you.
Is there anything you'd like to say, Lissa, or final thoughts? You might feel like you've said it all.
I'm enjoying the prospect of this opportunity to get to know you all and to have a part to play in what you think is important in your life. And you will do that for me as well. So I look forward to hearing from you and seeing where we go. We won't know till we get there.
Fantastic. Okay, Lissa. Well, thank you so much. And thanks everyone for joining and watching. And to our listeners who are listening to this a little bit later, thank you so much for being here. We'll finish off with one final video about the course and then our company showreel. Please pop in the chat any thanks to Lissa that you have in your heart for being such a generous interviewee today and sharing so much insight and inspiration with us. And we'll, I guess, say goodnight to you, Lissa. What time is it there?
Good night. It's 6:20.
Oh, okay. We'll say good
Dinner
evening.
time. Okay, bon appetit.
Bon appetit. Bon appetit. Thank you, Lissa. Thanks
Thank
so
you,
much.
Joe, very much.
It's
You're
a
lovely.
brave thing to be an artist, to call yourself an artist. I think that the artist's job is to take in experience and take in the world, try to make some sense out of it I do for myself, and then try to put that in some form back into the world that someone else can look at and say, oh, I learned something from this, or I've felt that experience, that makes sense to me. We begin the course with talking about materials and the roles that they play, not only in the function of the object, the materials you need to make this object, but in terms of their expression, what they say, how you can use the voices of different materials. I think the trick is to use those materials sort of honorably. Don't try to make them do something they don't want to do. There are techniques, some people say processes, ways of manipulating those materials to get to a certain goal, a certain structural or visual goal. What I'm going to show you are the simple techniques that I do, and you can learn them quickly and apply them quickly. We're going to reimagine what we already know and see where that can take us. It's not about improving your practice, it's about expanding your ideas, feeling supported in that process, and making great art. It is taking my experience, making it available to you, and the more you can do that, I think the fuller your practice is, and the more comfortable you feel with saying, I'm an artist. I've structured each module in the course so that you can use, and I invite you to use, your head, your hands, and your heart. I think that you never teach somebody else something without learning something yourself. The more we connect, I think, the more successful we each individually can be. We need art. We need nonverbal communication that lifts us up or gives us answers to questions or sends us on a path to being a better person or kinder or whatever it is in this world. Come join this community of artists who are going to be taking this course. I think you're going to enjoy it, learn a lot, and be able to see things differently, find things differently, and do things differently at the end of the course.